This episode of Counterpressed is presented by Subway. It's that time of year again, football fans. Grab your tickets to the Subway League Cup final on March 15th at Ashton Gate Stadium. Head over to ashtongatestadium.co.uk. Manchester United and Chelsea will go head-to-head in what is sure to be a cracking final. Can't make the game? Make sure you watch the highlights on the Barclays WSL YouTube channel. And of course, get your Subway fix beforehand. Download the Subway app now for fresh new deals every week. Eat fresh, feel good, freshly prepared per order. Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm in the studio with Jessy Parker Humphreys, Becky Taylor-Gill and special guest Maggie Murphy, Managing Director of Aston Villa Women. On today's show, we're doing a bit of a deep dive on Aston Villa, finding out what Maggie's been up to since she took on the role, and then we'll get into some of the WSL action from the weekend. Maggie, welcome to Counterpressed.
Well, it's very nice to be here and not just listen to you. So
I feel like this is a long overdue appearance.
I've only been in post for 4 months.
I know, but in life, because you've been involved in women's football for a while now. A lot of people know you from your time at Lewis when you were GM there, and obviously Lewis were very vocal for some of the campaigns they did, especially on the kind of equal prize money for the FA Cup. So I feel like you're a very kind of known presence and voice in women's football. No, in a good way. So I feel like it's long overdue to have you here. So we're very excited to have you here.
Nice to be here.
But firstly, Jessy, back from the Winter Olympics.
Yes, I'm back.
How was
great.
it? Yeah?
It was good fun. I don't think I'm as Winter Olympics pilled as Becky is, but
I don't know if that's true.
I have been enjoying it. I was mainly watching figure skating. It's a bit weird when you're there in Milan. I don't know if you felt like this. But it's like, then there's all that cool stuff going on, like in Cortina and Lavinia, and you're a bit like, oh, I'm sort of here, but I'm not here. And I wrote an article for The Observer this week before we'd sort of won any medals, saying we're not very good at winning medals, but we are very camp, and that's great fun. And then my dad texted me yesterday, because obviously we won 2 golds yesterday to take our tally to 3, and said, as soon as you leave, the campness ends and they start winning.
Yeah, so true.
You've been cursing us.
I thought you were going to say, now we're camp and we win things.
Well,
so it's
I think
a double
that's
whammy.
probably true, yeah.
And we have an important update on the status of the lost flows.
We believe the flows are at the DHL depot in East Croydon. I didn't trust them being delivered to my house.
That's so fair.
Just because I wasn't going to be in all day. So I'm going to make a pilgrimage to said depot. East Croydon is not too far. That feels really
important to make the journey to go and collect them from
But
Croydon.
I do have some nerves that, it will be a different suitcase, or the flows will have escaped somehow.
Yeah.
Gosh, I might be on the run.
We were thinking, is it going to be a sort of like Toy Story 4 plot where the flows do break out the suitcase and then they're sort of running around Milan airport?
I think it's really nice that we've given the flows a storyline, because I do think they have been forgotten amongst Milo and Tina, because obviously Milo and Tina are iconic and everybody loves them.
Speak for yourself. Because Milo and Tina were so expensive, I was always lasered in on
Guys,
the
my
flows.
Milo is on the way. I spent £50 on a Milo plushie.
And it's about
insane.
this big.
The scarcity mindset got me. I was like, I have to get it online, I have to get it now.
That is how they get you.
Yeah.
But we will be waiting with bated breath to see the family of flows.
Hopefully on Thursday. Should I bring them all in?
Yes.
Well, we're on Friday this week because of Champions League.
Bring them
on
all
Friday.
in.
So we're going to have a new one for the shelf. So definitely bring in at least one. And then if you want to bring them all in,
No, I want to
just
be
for a
reunited
laugh.
with all of them before they
Well, you have
go
to
on their
have yours.
onward journey.
obviously,
Yeah, exactly.
So yours will have to come with me.
Yeah.
And then I may as well bring the other two.
And one of them is huge.
One of them
My
is
Milo
huge.
might have
Honor wanted a
arrived.
huge one.
Yeah, as she should. My Milo might have arrived, so maybe I'll bring him in.
Yeah,
as
perfect.
well.
Maggie, I know
This
you
is
haven't been
wild.
watching the Olympics, so that's a good update for you. Okay.
No sporting update.
No, just Milo and Tina.
Of course,
And the
there's
flag.
more Winter Olympics this week, so maybe we'll talk about it on Friday. But for now, we'll part the Winter Olympics chat there. We'll get on to a bit of Aston Villa chat next. Maggie, first things first, I want to talk to you about your actual role, because Aston Villa are in a unique situation, like some of the clubs in the WSL now, where they have kind of separated out the women's team in terms of governance and investment and ownership. So talk to us about what your role actually is in the new look Aston Villa Women setup.
Yeah, so this is brand new, and to be honest, we're figuring it out as we go. It's quite an exciting time for the club. So it separated out just in the summer or autumn, let's say. So I'm the managing director overseeing the business side of the club, so I don't oversee the football side. That reflects how Aston Villa run the men's side too. So they have a president of business ops, and then they've got the football side that runs parallel. So we've kind of replicated that, but I report into my own board. Marissa Ewer is our director of football. She also reports into the same board as me. We've got an external investor as part of that setup that is not connected at all to the men's side of the club. But then there are tags, I guess, going across us. So the president of business ops for the men's of the central club is also on my board. Then I sit on the exec committee. So it's kind of like crossing over, but I still have autonomy and authority, and I've got accountability to my own board, not to the central club board.
And how have you noticed that independence? Because obviously sometimes the independence can be more in kind of idea than actual reality, because the Premier League club is so big and influential. But do you find that Villa is actually quite independent in how it's being kind of run in terms of Villa Women?
Yeah, so there's only 3 of us, Chelsea, Everton and Aston Villa, have actually done this from a legal sense so far. And that rule is changing as well. So there's only the 3 of us really to figure out how you do that with such a significant governance check. Some clubs do run things differently. So there is a managing director at Brighton, for example, who also sits on the exec board, Zoe. And so Brighton have set it up slightly differently as well. I mean, honestly, it would probably bore your listeners in terms of matrix management and all the rest of it, but it is actually, where it is really interesting is just literally how you set up the processes to function when you are so connected or have been so connected. But for example, on my side, when I first arrived, there was only 2 members of staff on the business side. I've now recruited 3 or 4 people. So we're actually, and I've separated those people into the women's side of the club. So they're no longer on the central club. They actually sit with us. So we have a brand new facility at Villa for the women's side, brand new offices, brand new gym, medical suite. And now the business team now sits alongside the players, alongside the coaching staff. So that's all completely brand new.
I think it is important to really kind of explain that and lay it out, because also we're chatting to you off the back of a pretty frustrating result for Villa, losing 7-3 to Spurs. They've been on a bit of a tricky run, but I think it's important for you to sort of kind of separate out what your role is within the business, which is not on the football side and much more on the commercial side, which we're going to get into because there's loads of stuff that you're trying to do at the club. But also, I think what's been interesting for us, we've often talked about this, is that often when the overall Premier League club does kind of have responsibility for the women's team as well, they may not be paying attention, and then suddenly they'll look at a bad run of results and think, hang on a minute, we've got to kind of intervene, without probably understanding the whole club and where it's going, and the recruitment and the performances and not just the results. Do you find, because Villa's separated out, there is a better understanding and appreciation because you're kind of in charge of your own project?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, maybe to say one thing, if I was doing a really bad job, or if someone in my team was doing a really bad job, you guys wouldn't know about it. And I think that when mistakes are made on the business side, you just literally, there's no visibility. And so I think that that football it's such a harsh world. Like, it's very, very visible when mistakes are made or when you're going through a bad patch. And I think that's a real challenge for anyone working on the football side. So I don't want to shirk away from like the performances, but also it's like, it can be quite a brutal time to be so public in that place, and no one would know whether me or my team were doing a really terrible job behind the scenes. I think where we are right now is we are in a build phase. We've got a really good team of staff. We're figuring things out. The team are super committed, and it's just it brings us back a little bit to what the long-term vision of the club is. What are we building? I think people sometimes forget that Villa's only been in the WSL for 5 years. That's not actually that long when you think about it. And imagine the change that's happened since that, they got promoted in 2019, 2020 during the pandemic. Like the club is like light years. It's so different from that time. But actually 5 years is not that long to actually build structure, to build process, to have continuity to, you know, all those kinds of things that when you look at some of the best run clubs in the country, whether men's football, women's football, there's continuity in there. And so I think we're at the start of that journey. And that's, you know, for me, my job is long term build. What's the business side? What's the fan base? Who are we as a club? Who do we want to be? And how do we connect the players to the staff, to the fans, to the community that surrounds us, to the wider club? And, you know, that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out now. But you can't rush it. I'm almost saying that out loud to you to remind myself of that myself. Because, you know, I can get impatient or want to move faster. But it's actually a build. Got to be patient.
I think to pick up on that element of, you know, say the business side or the commercial side not necessarily being in view, I'd be interested to hear you talk a little bit about, you know, how that element does interact with the football element, because, you know, there is a symbiotic relationship between the two. And, you know, maybe what we get wrong or what we misunderstand when we really just focus in on what we see on the pitch, because that's kind of naturally all we do see. But it'd be really interesting to sort of hear your insights around that.
I think for many years now, when a club has invested or supported the women's side, it's only been through the football department. And so the women's team is literally just a team. It's a team that reports into the sporting director. And if you've got good leaders in there that are able to advocate for a little bit more resource there, to extend the facilities there, to get better staff or coaching or, you know, improve the medical facilities, but it's literally just the sporting vector. And I think that what has happened therefore is that a few years ago the club was only losing a couple of $100,000 in investing into the women's side. Now you're looking at millions. And so I think now is the point where clubs are thinking, oh God, we've got to do something commercially, we've got to build it out. But to then take a team and turn that into a club, that takes time, because you've got to build the structure. You're a few years behind where you might want to be in terms of having your personality, having your brand, connecting with your fan base, doing some of the nuts and bolts. I think one of the challenges of some of the bigger clubs is that, you know, the expertise within a big club often is expertise in men's football that already has a fan base. It's inherited a fan base for more than 100 years. I'm talking the obvious here. I know that you guys know this, but I think that sometimes we forget that we have to go back to basics a little bit and connect face to face, like grab people by the hand and tell them why coming to the game is important, because that's what a lot of clubs were doing when they were a lot smaller. So it's not just how much do you spend on Facebook ads. This is like, what do you actually stand for and what you communicating to a potential fan base, and how do you get them in? I think it's a lot more face to face. So you need to have specific expertise in that space to do that.
It feels like sort of the $1 million question, obviously, in terms of taking that men's fan base and kind of turning it into a women's fan base, or getting people who, you know, especially for a team like Villa, where you're playing at Villa Park, you know, these are people who are going every fortnight to Villa Park anyway on a Saturday. How can you make them do that on a Sunday? And obviously you've got clubs like Arsenal who feel like they've done that really well alongside building kind of an own independent thing. We've also seen clubs like Chelsea maybe get halfway there, and then you've got clubs like City who it feels like they're still really struggling to kind of get that crossover. Obviously coming from Lewis, where there was such ethos of this equality between the men's and women's teams, and having this idea that that was the club, and, you know, the women's team were at a higher level than the men's team as well, and the impact that comes with that. How have you found then, I guess, moving to Villa and taking a stab at that question in such a different environment?
Well, and I think that is a really interesting question. When I was at Lewis, probably our fan base was about 30% crossover, I would reckon. At the time, I probably felt like that was less than people expected. But I think at Villa, I think the stat at the moment is about 8 or 9% crossover. And I think for some of the big clubs as well.
That's pretty good, because when I've spoken to other clubs, Chelsea, for example, the crossover is lower than 5%.
Yeah, and so I guess the question then is, do you, and this is the legitimate question that we're faced with, do you spend more time trying to convert men's fans, or do you go out and get your own fans? When I say your own fans, you know, you're like tapping into, you know, the 92% of people that are completely new anyway to the game. And I think you're probably trying to do a little bit of both. I think that for fans of men's football, you've got so many games already to then commit another day at the weekend to go and watch. You're not going to be able to do that week in, week out. You might do it every so often. You might want to take a different friend or a pal, or you might want to sit in a seat that you don't normally sit in. But I think there's a limit to that being long term. It's difficult to add in another 10 to 15 games into your year if you're a season ticket holder. I think then you're looking at who are the new audiences that are coming. And you know, I still fervently believe that women's football is much more representative of the national population than men's football is when it comes to fandom. But that's also a problem, because where do you go first? Is it for families? Is it students? Is it, older demographics? And like, honestly, when you look at the Villa fan base, like I spend a lot of time talking to the fans. I think it's really important to build that relationship, to understand why they come. Almost every person I speak to comes for different reasons, and they come with different people. Whether it's, obviously we've got Villa's done a really, really good job with providing a brilliant matchday experience for families, for kids. Like, honestly, it's phenomenal. But I also meet people in their 20s and 30s that are going with their mates and they want to go and have a good time, and this is like a social space. Other people are trying to maybe cross over 2 or 3 things. Like, they might go with work colleagues because they don't get to catch up with them during the week, and this is like a place where they get to go and do something for fun, but they also get to catch up with that work colleague that they don't see enough of, or a former work colleague. I had a beautiful conversation with at one of our fans forums, which we just started, of a guy, I think he was in his 70s, used to be a season ticket holder on the men's side, stopped coming because he just didn't feel quite as safe. And I don't mean that from a violence perspective. I mean that from like just being a bit older and, you know, the hustle and bustle of going to Villa Park on a men's game. Now he started coming, but he started coming with his daughter and his daughter-in-law. So it's just the 3 of them. The 2 women are in their 40s, cute. Right? How beautiful. And then they're coming along to the fans forum to have their say on what they want Villa to look like for the women's side. I got goosebumps when I think about that.
Goosebumps with the lesbian daughters.
Sidetrack, but I want to know as well, given where Birmingham is geographically, do you find as well that sometimes you lose fans because then they want to travel to watch some of the bigger sides, and I mean that in that, you know, the big 4, as it were? Do you find that's a challenge as well? Like, they're more interested in going to watch Arsenal rather than the team that's closest to them geographically?
Yes and no. I think that naturally, look, you have to take your hats off to Arsenal. Like, there are people that will leave Birmingham to go and watch Arsenal women. I want to stop that immediately. But
stop
them
trains.
at the border. But that's a great challenge for me. Like, there should be no reason for someone living in Birmingham to jump on a train and go to watch Arsenal women when you've got us on the doorstep and you've got Birmingham City also in WSL2. That's a brilliant challenge. I love that challenge. Like, how can I stop those people from doing that? I think that's brilliant. The other thing that we have in our favour is we are in the heart of the country. We're the heart of the WSL. We play in the most beautiful ground. Like, Villa Park is absolutely stunning. We've got all the facilities available to us there. We are completely backed by the club in terms of the use of those facilities. Personally, my drive is to make Aston Villa have the best matchday experience in the WSL. Grab all those neutral fans that we talk about, those floating fans, the fans of women's football but who maybe haven't aligned to a club. Like, I'll grab them because I'm in the middle of the country. You're only a couple of hours away from anywhere. So I want away fans to put us on the, when the fixtures come out, I want them to go, when are we playing Villa? I want to go to Villa Park. And so that's what I want to do. And I want to stop the people that might be curious about other clubs and turn that curiosity into, oh, but the matchday experience is so good at Villa that why would I go somewhere else?
I think it's really interesting to kind of talk about Arsenal because they have been so successful in kind of igniting that fan base and really engaging people. And I think that kind of started, obviously, post-Euros as well. They were very lucky with the amount of England players they had, but also that run to the semi-final in the Women's Champions League against Bayern. I think that really started something, and obviously they won the Champions League last year and they've had kind of good runs. How much does that make your life difficult? Obviously, at the moment, not on a good run. You know, obviously you're here on a Monday morning right now, but if you were kind of going into the office this morning after yesterday, how much does that impact what you can do behind the scenes?
Yeah, it impacts a lot. I guess my job is to try to figure out how to make match days and our fan engagement as little reliant, that's not the right phrase, but not dependent on the match day results. However, obviously the results are there. It does impact your comms, for example. You can't put out funny, silly TikToks the day after a result like that. Like, it does actually influence everything that you do. But I think if you think about the core purpose of what you are, your core drive, your North Star, like my point on match day experience, but also I feel like we have a social contract with our fans and with our fan base. That doesn't change. We still have to be open and transparent. We still have to talk to the fans about what they want, what they need, react and respond to that. And so I think it's of course it's a challenge. Yeah, of course it would be easier if we were winning, and we're a football club, so we that has to be the priority. I think what we're trying to do is figure out how you merge everything together to create the best possible football club that cares for its fans. The fans care for you, you care for your players, the players care for you. You know, it's like, how do you create a really positive ecosystem?
Something you mentioned there on the sort of post-Euros and Lionesses, when you chat to a lot of clubs, they talk about how, from a commercial point of view, having Lionesses in your team is like gold dust. Now Rachel Daly doesn't play for England anymore. How much of a challenge do you find it to try and kind of platform those players? Obviously, Lucy Parker has had call-ups in the past, but has had injury issues recently. To platform the players that might have the biggest visibility outside Villa and kind of ride on that a little bit.
They've got the Kendall heads.
Yeah, we've got Lucia Kendall.
We have got Lucia Kendall. So
all the
true.
Kendall heads going to Villa Park.
Sorry, I forgot about Lucia Kendall.
Yeah, Lucia and Missy as well. So we also have Rachel Maltby, who's the under-19s England captain Lionesses. So we've actually got the young talent that are coming through. So hopefully that will also stand us in good stead, like I'm saying, for the long term as we do this build. I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes on individual players, and I think that clubs are in a very interesting position when it comes to, you know, we're told a lot that people follow players, they don't always follow clubs. And I think that can be a challenging position to be in, because yes, you might want to invest and support your players to build up their personal brands and, you know, lean into that, but they could leave at any point. And also, the more that you platform individual players, the more that they come under scrutiny externally as well. So you build up a player, and then suddenly there's a lot of negativity that comes from increased visibility. So you've got to make sure that you've got everything in place to support those players when they go through that process as well. We now have invested into our comms and content. So I'm hoping that over the coming months, and for the longer term, we'll start to see more types of content from the Villa side too, more behind the scenes, you know, platforming more players and not just relying on one or two, because that's quite a heavy burden as well.
I know you've been working with Baller, good friends of ours, on some fan engagement stuff at games. What's the impact of that been?
Yeah, so coming in, I think what I really wanted to do was make sure that whilst we had a really great experience for families and for kids, that we also...
Olaf, of course, at Villa Park. and other... Was Peppa Pig? There was some other... Maybe Gruffalo, actually. Gruffalo was another one of the mascots. There were a few mascots who were turning up at Villa Park on the family.
Yeah, we've got Bella and Hercules, who are two. They actually went travelling for the last couple of years. Allegedly, I'm learning this. But they've come back.
They wanted a gap year.
Yeah. So now they are back, and
I'd
the
love to
fans
hear
are great.
about where they've been. Yeah, love to hear about their travels.
That's for another podcast, maybe with Flo.
Wait,
Flo,
so Bella and Hercules are they the official Villa mascots?
Yes.
Okay.
What are they? Lions.
They are lions.
Okay. Could we get them on the pod?
Yeah.
Maybe with Stanford and Bridget, and we can talk about their different lion
Okay, so they're back. Thank God.
Back. And the fans were really happy. The fans were asking for it. You know, they're back now.
At the fans forum, bring Bella and Hercules back.
Yeah, that was actually us. You recognised us.
Yeah, I was wearing a moustache
and
some big glasses, but it was me.
Yeah, so for the 6 home games, final league games after Christmas, we decided to build each of them into individual kind of whole day events. So we had Susie Ruffle come down for our home game against Brighton. Again, we're being a bit playful. Obviously, Susie from Brighton fan, but we're like, yeah, let's lean into that. Let's not shy away from that kind of rivalry piece. We've had Baller FC. They've taken on the last 2 games. We've got Karen Carney and Jill Scott coming for the next game, March 15th against Man City, doing a live podcast ahead of the game. Then we've got a big event for our Arsenal game on April 26th, where we're working with Guinness. And we're working with the Underground Fan Club, again, on like a big talent-led piece pre-game. And then we've got Back to Baller for May 3rd, end of season party. So we've actually put in place all of these, like a whole match day experience, which is also targeting people who are a little bit older than your traditional families.
And also one for JPH, lover of beer. I don't know if you knew, Villa Park is very unique because it basically has its own box park on site.
Yeah, so we're launching the warehouse. It's a soft launch has happened. The soft launches are in place at the moment. And so we will hopefully take that over ourselves as well for pre-game parties and events. But we also, so at the moment, our fan zone, it's just small things. Like the fans are like, the fan zone's great, but it's outside and it's freezing. So we've just shifted that indoor, because we've got Villa Park, we now have a beautiful indoor space that we're using for the fan zone. and this is a lot of this feedback is just coming from setting up fans forums, which they'd never had before. So we've done 2 already. We set up the 12-player challenge, which has gone down really well, where it was really clear to me at the first fans forum that some of the things that the fans were asking for were actually things that I don't think the club should be doing. They're more things like that I think, again, coming back to that social contract, the fans should be doing themselves. But if they can't, then let me figure out if I can support them to do it. So I'll give you an example. I think one or two comments said, oh, could the club like print out the song sheets for the fans? And I actually felt like, I think that's a fans thing, because it's up to you as to what you're going to sing and how you want to support. So just before Christmas, we launched this 12-player challenge where we made a fund of £500 available for fans to apply for. And if they had a really great proposal, we would help them. We won't own the product. We won't own the outcome. The one that won is a fan that wants to set up a YouTube channel, like a fan-led YouTube channel for covering the fans' experience at Villa Park. We're going to run it again, see what else comes up. There's lots of different types of things that came through. And I think that's just like, again, just what do you want? Because I might not know. I haven't been around long enough. I'm a custodian. I get to be here for a while, but you've been here for the long haul and you'll be here forever. So what is it that we can do to empower you to create the experience that you really want?
I have a question for you, actually, because we've had some really great, obviously, feedback around the alcohol trial, clubs involved. I know some really positive numbers from Stamford Bridge about the kind of increase in individual match day spend as well, which is obviously really important for clubs. How have you found it as a club?
I tell you what, hats off to Susie Ruffle, a comedian who tries to do a set at 10:30 in the morning. Or like, I'm being serious. Like,
no, that's tough.
With 12 o'clock kickoffs, this is really, really hard. So linked into the alcohol pilot, I'd actually be nervous if there was lots of people slamming down the beers at 10:30 in the morning in the pre-match. And I'm being flippant, but for Villa, we have not been the main pick all season. Every single game has been 12 p.m. So I don't actually know how much money we could be making if it was a 2 o'clock kick. I don't know, because I've not even had one to test and trial against. I don't know whether our attendances would have shot up with all these pre-match activations. If these pre-match activations were actually at 12:30 and get the lunchtime crew in before the 2 p.m. kickoff, my attendances might be better than where they are. But I just don't know, because it's only been 12 o'clocks that I've been given.
What would your ideal kickoff
2 o'clock.
be?
We've requested 2 o'clock kickoffs throughout the season. And look, I actually think that the league, Nikki, WSL and the broadcasters, they're in a difficult position. I think everyone's doing everyone at least is acting in good faith and trying to figure out how we do this. And I feel, as someone that was involved in previous years, has been away for a bit and come back, admittedly with a different hat on, there is a different energy around the collaboration across the league and the clubs for sure. And I do think there's this dedicated willingness to make this succeed. And yet, I think for some of us clubs where our profile is not as big as it is for others, I feel like sometimes there's a little bit leaning into the top clubs for those preferential 2 p.m. slots. It just makes it even harder for us to operate. So yeah, I think the 12 p.m. Instinctively and intuitively, I think the 12 p.m. kickoffs are a challenge for us, but I don't know, because I don't have the... So coming back to the alcohol piece, it is just a challenge, 12 o'clock. People are drinking, but they're probably having one. But also 12 o'clock, you're not even slamming down Coca-Colas. Like, it's just
Speak for yourself.
But you know what I mean? It's not even like... It's such an interesting time, because you're going to leave the house, you'll have had breakfast. So we can put on brunch, right? But people have left the house having had breakfast. They're not quite ready for lunch. They don't need a brunch, because it's like, do you know what I mean? I can't sell that much stuff.
Yeah. No, totally. Speaking of preferential treatment for the bigger clubs, 2 big changes coming next season. One is still proposed, not ratified, and one is going ahead, which is the changes to the League Cup. So from next season, the 3 teams that enter into the Champions League, even if they don't progress through qualifying, they won't be involved in the League Cup. And also the proposed changes to the FA Cup, which Tom Gary reported on a few weeks ago, but would involve 4 teams being seeded, a bracket for the last 32, no more draws from the last 32 onwards. It would have huge changes and huge impact on the outside the big clubs. How much do you think there is a priority given to those bigger sides when it comes to changes, control, governance, influence? How much do you think we need to kind of make sure that all clubs are represented fairly?
Talking about the League Cup, first of all, I've listened to your podcast where you've talked about all your different ways. I think, Jessy, if I remember correctly, you were actually quite serious in how you would change the League Cup, and the rest of you were kind of like...
That tends to be how it goes on this
throw in
podcast.
elephants. We might as well. The League Cup's an interesting one because no one really cares, and everyone would like it to be more interesting and figure out a way of making it work. And it's not profitable. You don't really get, even if you win, it's not huge amounts of money. So everyone's kind of like, well, what's the best way to use it? Is it for player development? Is it to make sure that we've got more games? So everyone's kind of like open to it being a bit more malleable. I think with the FA Cup, the challenge there, no one's really asked for any structural changes, at least not from any of the consultations or from any of the clubs that I know, and we've spoken quite a lot about this. And I think that it's probably, even from the clubs that are going to be seeded, and the funny thing is, it's the top 4 WSL clubs, but we know who they are because they always are, those clubs. It's not, you can almost attribute those...
If it was like the Premier League and the top 4 did change on a regular basis, I guess there's almost more of a concept where, okay, your domestic success is then linked to an advantage in a domestic cup. I mean, I wouldn't agree with it, but I think the changeable nature of it would make it more understandable. But as you say, when you could just write those names in now,
until
it's like, here's the semi-finals every year.
Yeah, but then they are the semi-finals anyway, more or less. So I think people are trying to figure out how to make women's football a commercial success. And we're all figuring that out. Clubs, we're trying to figure that out. The league's trying to figure it out. The FA Cup is trying to figure it out. But the FA Cup decided that, the FA is saying that it's a structural thing. Whereas I think it's the one thing that everyone loves is like not knowing who you're going to pick out. Are you going to get an easy run? Are you going to get a hard run? I love this competition, but Villa's already been knocked out in the first round. That is the way that the FA Cup runs. You've got 2 WSL clubs pitted against each other, and you've still got tier 4 clubs that go through. That is beautiful. It might be painful in the moment, but I think there's been talk about, we need a tentpole moment where the bracket comes in. And I think, but you've got tentpole moments at every draw. And it's just about maybe the narrative and making that the piece.
And I think also we've spoken on this pod this season about the lack of upsets and how that hasn't helped build interest and narrative across the competition, but that doesn't seem like a reason to basically tear up the whole structure of it.
The other thing I would say is that for me, because of the kind of cultural nature of the FA Cup, by the time you get to the semi-finals, people are invested. I think whatever teams make the semi-final. So for me, it feels like better to have, say, the matchup we're going to get next weekend, Chelsea versus Manchester United, earlier, because that's a game that people are going to pay attention to, because it's also going to be the League Cup final in a couple of weeks. They're 2 teams who'll be going against each other for Champions League qualification. That is a win, I think, to have that game earlier and have eyes on the FA Cup earlier, because by the time you get to the semi-finals, almost regardless of the teams that are going to be there, I feel like that attention should come more naturally. And the other thing I find a bit odd about it is, the top 4 teams have a much more, this is maybe, the top 4 teams I think naturally can pull in their fan bases because they do well more often, they spend more, they have bigger name players, there's a lot of stuff there already. When I think about Tottenham getting that run to the FA Cup final and what that would have meant for the club and that fan base to get to go to Wembley on that day, that for me felt like a real moment for Spurs where, they've taken their time to work up to the level they have within the WSL and having a fantastic season this season. But that really felt like a statement moment for them as a club to say, like, we're here and, okay, we're not necessarily a top 4 team yet, but we are a team who can make big cup finals, and that matters. And I think, obviously as part of that, they beat, like, Manchester City. And so it's not like this format makes that an impossibility to happen, but I think it makes it a lot harder to happen. We've spoken before with Kate and Gillian what it meant for West Ham to reach an FA Cup final, and they will freely tell you they got the lowest ranked team at every point in the draw.
And that's what's so beautiful. And not least because with the FA Cup, there is actually decent prize money to be won. And so that bracketing, it's not just that it facilitates you competitively, it also facilitates your access to prize money. And then that becomes that vicious circle, virtuous circle.
And I know when you were at Lewis, obviously they were campaigning a lot about getting equal prize money to the men's FA Cup. But even the most recent increases that the FA has made to that prize money has made a huge difference for Tier 5, Tier 4, Tier 3 teams when they do progress even to the 4th, maybe 5th round, because they're taking home money that can pay for an entire season for some of the really lower tier ones. And I think if you start to meddle with the structure of that, like you say, the prize money, it doesn't seem quite fair anymore.
Yeah, and the most recent additions to the prize money all came in at the later stages when the WSL, maybe WSL2 came in. Because I remember I was still at Lewis at that time and we actually said that we thought that was unfair, that it should go lower down, because I think they doubled the prize money at that point. I'm still so avidly wanting there to be a rejig in the way that we fund the FA Cup and make sure that as much money as possible can go down the pyramid, because otherwise, you won't get those upsets anymore, and that money is vital to some of the smaller clubs.
And also, when you were at Lewis and Manchester United came into town and you got a huge record attendance that day, that just shows what, if you can get a tie against a big size, how it can really transform a club and what you can do for the fans as well.
Yeah, that day, but funnily enough, that day, it was honestly a brilliant day, but we were also kind of wanting Brighton that day because Brighton were on a really bad form at that time, and we were like, oh, could we nick it? And we only lost 3-1 to Man United that day, and it's this whole point of like, who are we going to get, and could you get an easy run? And like, I guess when you enter into the FA Cup, I'm not even joking, you always think this is your year, you're going to win it. When I was at Lewis, I thought we were going to win it. I know you're laughing, but that's the whole point.
That's the magic of the cup.
Like, you think you might win it. With Villa this year, I thought we were going to win it. Like, but that's because you're gonna come in at a point where hopefully you win your first game, and then basically you want to work your way until you're the lowest seeded team, and then you're just going to get plucky. And like, do you know what I mean? It's beautiful. I love this competition. Everyone loves this competition.
What do you think is the best way? What do you think? Well, Spurs got to the final, so I think Villa are a prime team to be able to try and recreate that. But what do you think is the best way for fans to use their voice to try and put pressure to stop a decision like this happening?
Look, on a really basic level, and I know this sounds naff, but just go to the games. Like, this is the big challenge that we're all facing. The reason that the FA are trying to figure out how do we make this more commercially viable, how do we reduce our losses, is because we're worried about attendances in person as well as broadcast. So the more that fans are actually, when they've got a day, they don't have to go and watch their own team, they can go and watch another team. I think, we do need to be doing that and bringing our mates. And your podcast audience isn't exactly, because they are probably going to games, but if they're not, they should be going. But I think in general, I think, people sharing their incredible FA Cup stories. Everyone's got a story about the FA Cup, whether it's from watching or playing, because it goes down so far as well. We've probably all played in the FA Cup at some point in teams. So like, I remember playing in the FA Cup, like in the lowest possible entry point. But it's like, you've got these stories, share those stories. And yeah.
We had a conversation this season about Chelsea fans being frustrated their game wasn't on TV. But I also think how we've seen non-league men's football galvanise recently post-COVID and really get attendances going, and the success of things like non-league day, Women's Football Weekend hasn't quite hit those heights. I think it has helped a little bit, but I would love to see Women's FA Cup weekends, like you say, Maggie, seeing people go and explore a different team locally if they are playing in the competition. And not saying that they shouldn't go to the team they support, but if they're playing away, like, how could you go and experience a completely different ground, completely different team, something that maybe feels a bit more grassroots? A team that's been on an unbelievable run in the competition is Chatham Town. Now, like, could you go and experience that and go support them? They're probably, I think they had a record crowd.
Well, Villa
for their
fans
can
because they're playing Birmingham, so it's a good opportunity to go and see Chatham Town. If you're
Becky, sorry.
I think the frustration around this kind of proposed FA Cup is kind of similar to how the WSL have maybe done some other things as well, which is, it seems really, it's kind of the question of the commercial success of the WSL versus the smaller clubs, because yes, seeding it might be more successful for the FA for the semi-finals and the final. It might get them more money. But actually, I think part of their job is to empower like the lower WSL clubs to be able to be commercially successful as well. It's not just about the top line of like, this is our numbers. And so it feels like they're kind of sacrificing those teams in order to meet their goals. And actually that just creates like a bigger disparity. And like that part aside, it also just feels like that's the soul of English football is like the FA Cup and like the draw and like how exciting it is. Like big cultural touchstone moments. This is going to sound ridiculous. Like Rod Stewart doing his thing. Like they're like moments that women's football is still kind of like experiencing and kind of building. And it just feels like such a shame. And that, yeah, that they're kind of, it's the soul of it and leaving kind of those other smaller clubs behind. I don't know if you feel like those bigger clubs are kind of prioritised and that makes your job harder.
As far as I'm aware, it's not the big clubs that have asked for this, and we are still in a consultation phase, so we don't know what will happen next. And I also feel like everyone is in a challenging position, trying to figure out how to drive the attendances and to drive the viewership. So no one's in a great position. No one's like lording it over anyone else in this scenario. So I think we're all just trying to figure out how to make this work. But yeah, I think you're right in that we want to be able to support everyone to be generative, because that's ultimately going to lead to a much more sustainable competition, league, club. Because yeah, I don't know. From my perspective, I don't want women's football to be dependent on anyone. But there's a harsh reality out there, which is at the moment women's football is pretty dependent on others. So yeah, getting that right is really important.
Well, Maggie, you're booked and busy. You're a busy woman. So we will leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us. And we will be campaigning against those FA Cup changes and doing our most. And yeah, good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
So now that Maggie's gone, we can really get into Villa Spurs. It was not a good day at the office for Aston Villa. The bad run continues. They have now lost 4 games in a row. They had such a good run before Christmas that had carried on from the back end of last season. Natalia Arroyo's stocks were so high, but it has been pretty poor the last few weeks. Big defeat to Liverpool, conceding 7 goals to Spurs. So sloppy. I think the big issue for me is how poor they are looking in defence, how disorganised they look, and a real lack of leadership. And I think, there's been some intentional recruitment with Villa over the last 2 windows where they've really prioritised young, exciting players, which is great. But it does feel, not only are they lacking goals and there's so much reliance on Kirsty Hansen, but they're also lacking defensive structure and defensive stability, and we're seeing that in the amount of goals they conceded. They conceded the most amount of goals in the league, more than Leicester, more than West Ham.
That is crazy. I mean, firstly, thank you to Kirsty Hansen for your service to my fantasy league team and everyone's fantasy team, to be fair. I was really enjoying it. I was like, yay, Kirsty Hansen scored. And then Honor was like, everyone's got Kirsty Hansen in their team. And I was like, oh, I can't just enjoy getting some points. This game was so crazy. I feel like Sky's multi-view should have just stopped cutting away from it, because it was like they'd cut away and go to another game and it'd be like back goal. Villa just can't defend. When you look at the game against Everton and the goals they concede in that, the goals they concede in this. I mean, some of this was just, fluky, and Ellie Roebuck really didn't cover herself in glory in goal at all. I think the moment that really summed it up was when Villa scored their 3rd, and I think at that point it was like 5-3 maybe. Or maybe it was when they scored their 2nd and it made it like 4-2 actually, and then immediately Spurs went and scored a 5th, and you're just like, okay, like it's 4-2, you're maybe not going to come back, but like so immediately switch off and allow Spurs to just keep on going, scoring. And this is a Spurs team who we know they don't create a lot. Lots of their and Tottenham are a team who I think recruited really well in January. I think we really saw what Celia Galpsek can bring to the side. I think you've been able to see that already just generally, but, you know, the goal and assist contributions coming here too. The ability to bring someone like Tinker Tamberg off the bench. You know, I know she's sort of been coming back to full fitness, so that's maybe why she's not been starting, but it just shows you that depth that they've got there. But yeah, so funny. I mean, also just Spurs scored a hell of a lot of goals from not creating.
2.8 XG.
So
and they've
for
got
context,
7 goals.
when Villa drew 0-0 with Leicester, I think their XG from that game was about 4, and they didn't score. Spurs scored 7 from a low XG. Like, sometimes that's the way it goes, but Villa really, did not cover themselves in glory, and it feels like a tough moment for them.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that because I know there might be some Villa fans that listen to the show. We've got Maggie on and think, okay, I don't care about the fan activation. We're on a stinky run and our team looks bad. For me, we are big Natalia Arroyo stands on this pod. I think she's a brilliant coach. I think she is also a coach that lots of clubs would have their eye on. So I would stick by her because I think she'll get snapped up in a heartbeat. I think the big thing for them to think about this summer is a squad refresh. Obviously, they're not going to be involved in the playoff. They're going to be fine. And given how bad Leicester are, you're going to be fine. So this season especially, I don't think you need to make any quick, rash decisions. But I do look at that squad and I worry about there's no nice middle ground. You've either got the much more experienced older players like Rachel Daly that aren't really contributing much to the team anymore, or you've got the super young, talented players like Chastity Grant, who there's a lot of reliance on but lack the experience, game management, maybe a little discipline. Like, you're missing the sort of Rachel Causes of this world who can just, snap it out of them. Really experienced, strong WSL credibility, have been there, done that. I think they need a bit more of that this summer, as well as the really exciting players. Obviously, they spent a lot on Orange Jean-Françoise. She's been great already for them, but buffet that out a bit. And I think you've got a good team who can go somewhere. And that's why I wouldn't make any rash decisions on Arroyo, personally.
Yeah, I think it's complicated. I do really like Arroyo, and I, think there has been points where you watch Villa and it feels like you can really see what they're trying to do. I think when you just look at the level of disorganisation they've had over the past couple of weeks, that's the bit that feels concerning to me. Now, I think, they've sort of struggled with having both D'Angelo and Roebuck in goal, and they've kind of flipped between the two for various reasons. I'm not sure if... I still desperately want to believe and hope there is a fantastic goalkeeper in Ellie Roebuck. We're not seeing it. D'Angelo, I've never really rated. So I think that's something that doesn't help in terms of setting up a defence. They just look very disorganised at the moment, and to be scoring 3 goals in a game and getting nowhere near even a draw is, that's just not sustainable.
Yeah. Becky, I'm sorry to say you're on for another Liverpool defeat.
You never get me in here when we've won.
I know.
I'm never here on a Monday when we've won. Obviously this season that is
few and far
extremely
between.
rare, so...
Hey, but they went big in the January transfer window and things are looking so much better.
Yeah, I will say 2-0 compared to 9-1. Yeah, we did score. Is
You'd had so much vodka by that point.
Yeah, I can't remember.
You'd rolled your way out.
Yeah, I think that is an improvement, and I do think you are starting to see... we're off the bottom of the table.
I genuinely think with that investment that's come, the time that Taylor's now had with that team, we can't forget they also had a huge injury crisis. Like, they looked bad and they were conceding a lot of late goals, and we put the pressure on Taylor, and I think you were saying at the start of the season, could he be the first manager that we potentially see go? But the fact that they've gone out and spent a lot in January and they've managed through that injury crisis, and you're starting to see the fruits of his labour play out, I think they're looking in a much better place.
Yeah, I thought they were good against Chelsea. I think so. I don't think Chelsea are in a great spot at the moment. They didn't look particularly good in this game. I think to lose to Chelsea from a set piece and a Lauren James brilliant strike is, that's not bad
It's
by
not the
any
end of the
means.
world. Yeah.
I think the press looked really good and Chelsea really struggled to build up, which is, an issue that they've had throughout the season. And I felt like Liverpool definitely had their moments where, maybe a bit more you know, that kind of just like pause in the box, like they could have looked more dangerous. Obviously, I think it was Bergstrom did score after about 3 minutes, but it was like an incredibly obvious handball. But she was unfortunate because, you know, she could have taken that shot. It's just the ball bounced up and hit her hand. So it was like fair to rule it out. But, you know, they were able to take advantage of Chelsea still not looking particularly organised defensively. I thought Fukunaga Nagano looked really good in the midfield against Cuthbert, although I did think Cuthbert looked better than she maybe had in recent weeks. It felt like quite routine for Chelsea, but in a way that I thought Liverpool, they just looked like a team.
A functioning
who had
team.
come with an idea of how they wanted to play, and it was, you know, at points effective even if they weren't able to score. And, you know, like Chelsea obviously lost to Everton at Kings Meadow, so but you know, that was an Everton team which I felt like, you know, they got their goal and then all they wanted to do was sit back. I didn't feel like that about Liverpool, and I think in the grand scheme of things that's a better place to be in.
I mean, we'll see next weekend with the FA Cup.
That'll be really
I think
interesting.
that will
Who
be
have they got?
Everton.
Ooh, yes, I forgot.
They're not playing it out.
We pulled a
They're-
Merseyside derby out the hat.
Is it? Let me check
Brewdog.
where it is.
At the Brewdog? That's what the kids are
Brewdog.
Is
calling
it
it
at
now.
home? Let me check. It's at the Brewdog.
At the Brewdog. Jessy, as we've got you on, we've got to talk about Chelsea's lack of goals at the moment, and they're just slightly stale attacking play. James was deployed in a bit of a false nine yesterday. I thought she was actually struggling to kind of get involved with play, but then when she gets a goal and assist, that's what she can do, whether or not she's in the game or not. That's what Lauren James can pull out of a hat. But you cannot avoid looking at the huge attacking gap between Chelsea and their rivals at the moment. 18 fewer goals than City. We know that City have kind of bumped up.
Okay, that's rival one. That's just rival singular though, right?
Yeah, but they've scored fewer than Arsenal.
Might be still ahead.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, City's attack is in a different stratosphere, I think, to everyone
City's
else.
attack is in a different stratosphere, and they've done what we see less and less in the WSL, which is when you can pad your goals for against terrible teams like Leicester. They do that on Friday night, and Leicester are appalling.
I mean, the other thing, though, with City is they don't need it. They're so far ahead points-wise. It doesn't really matter.
But what I mean is just looking at that gap, when traditionally Chelsea, that's not what we know of Chelsea. Now, part of that is down to injuries and squad issues. Part of that is someone like Aggie Beaver-Jones, who started the season really hot, picked up a small injury and has kind of really struggled to find a place, find a form since. Sam Kerr coming back, it's very hard to see, understandably, that she's ever going to hit those heights again. Alyssa Thompson is actually the highest goal scorer in the WSL for Chelsea, but, you know, Bonpastor's obviously still trying to fit her into the system and get the best out of her. So why do you think it's been such a struggle for them this season? And, you know, how do you think they rectify it?
I am far more concerned about Chelsea's ability to defend than about their ability to score goals. They are underperforming their XG, which I understand why I've seen it used in like a lot of articles, but it kind of like misunderstands XG to a certain extent. It's like Chelsea have overperformed it in the past, now they're underperforming it, but that's not actually measuring their chance creation. That the XG bit is what measures their chance creation, not whether they're above or below it. That's not to say that I think the chance creation is amazing. You know, as I say, City, for example, look like the chances that they create are amazing, and that's, you know, very different to what Chelsea are able to do. I think the problem Chelsea have is when you're putting yourself in a position where you're conceding so many good chances, and there has been an obvious decline in Chelsea's ability to not concede big chances, that then puts more pressure on your need to create chances and score goals. And I think that's where they've ended up in a position where it's harder. It's like an example I would say is the Arsenal City game from the other week. Arsenal played incredibly well. The out of possession approach was spot on. They totally limited City, which means that when they score their one goal, you know, City had almost no opportunity to get back into the game. Chelsea scored one goal against Manchester City the week before that, but they could have conceded about 8, you know, and I think that's the issue that, for me, that is the bigger issue for Chelsea right now than chance creation, which isn't to say that chance creation isn't an issue at all, but I just feel like the goals thing is a bit of a strange thing to focus on.
Would you say, though, because I think I agree with you, defensively, for me, Natalie Bjorn is the biggest miss right now for Chelsea, so much so. But in the past, Chelsea perhaps could have painted over the cracks a little bit with the
fact... Sure, Chelsea don't have a form goal scorer, no. And I mean, I think it's quite clear that right now Bompastor doesn't rate Kerr or Beaver Jones. I think I don't like that. I would start an actual striker. I think even when Kerr came on, you could see how much more threatening Chelsea looked, even though she fluffed quite a few chances. I think Kerr is a player who it feels like you do just need to like play her into form a bit, but Bompastor doesn't want to do that. I think given her performances, I think that's a mistake, and I think Chelsea will be a far more dangerous attacking team, even with a Kerr who's maybe at a 7 out of 10 compared to what she was before the ACL. Be interesting, obviously she'll go to the Asian Cup and get good game time, you'd assume, for Australia. I also have some scepticism about Chelsea's behind the scenes approach and whether they'd want to keep someone like her on big money, and that this is just like a phasing out with her contract coming to an end anyway. So I think there's a couple of like things going on there. But yeah, they Chelsea don't have a form. I mean, aside from, I would say Thompson has been in pretty spectacular form, and she's looked far better than I expected her to at this point in her Chelsea career. And LJ, we know LJ is a player who takes her time to come back into form, but when she does come into form, she can go supernova. I thought her scoring that goal yesterday was a very positive sign. And I think, having someone like LJ who can consistently get shots. I mean, the goal's crazy. She just sort of like skips past Nagano. She's like not even looking at the goal. And yeah, like when she's in form, it's just, and that's true for like all of the big teams. Like you need it all to come together.
A really critical period about to come up for Chelsea, so it does feel like someone's got to hit form, and maybe James is that person.
They have to beat United. They have to beat United.
If they don't beat United in the FA Cup, and then they've obviously got the League Cup final on the horizon, and they've got the quarter-final against Arsenal. Whew.
For confidence, they have to beat United.
Oh, how easy is it going to be for you to stick to your no rattle 2026 if you lose a Champions League quarter-final to Arsenal?
The silence is definitely...
That says it all.
Witness protection.
You got to come on, talking about moustache and glasses. You're going to be coming on with the moustache and glasses, and we'll say, this is Messy Parker on the sofa at the moment.
We've replaced Jessy. They're never coming back.
Let's quickly touch on some of the other things. Everton, sans Brian Sorensen. I said on the pod and in my notes app, when will it end? And my God, 2 wins on the bounce. Who knew the under-18 boys coach, was the answer to all their problems? 2 1-0 wins, a little bit scrappy, a little bit lucky. But hey, that's what you got to do. Amazing to see this kind of new manager bounce from them. We touched on City there in that conversation about how many goals they're scoring. But, I mean, it's one thing to beat a really poor Leicester, but, like, you absolutely destroy them. And Leicester were woeful.
Although they did hit the post about 2 or 3 times, so that Alicia Lehmann goal that could have been, we would have been there. But yeah, City look pretty terrifying in that game, and obviously losing to Arsenal, I wonder if that was just like this moment where it's like, okay, like we do still got to lock in. And
I feel for City in that I don't think it will haunt them, because in the grand scheme of things, they will look at the title being such a priority. But given how they played in that Chelsea League Cup semi-final and the chances they had that they missed, I think they really will be kicking themselves that it couldn't be at least 2 trophies for them this season. They should do well in the FA Cup as well. But I look at that thinking, that was such a missed opportunity, because you could have already had one in the bag in the next couple of weeks. But hey, that's what happens. And then...
Sorry, can I just say...
Yeah.
Leicester... hate them.
I mean, yeah, I
so
can't.
Fair. Why?
They're just so
bad.
Do you know why? I'll tell you for why. That I've always said Leicester are stinky all season, And some people felt that they disagreed and phoned me up to tell me. And
I thought you were going to say me. I was like, I never rang you.
And all I'm saying is, one of us was right.
I will say, though, I do like their current recruitment process, which is WSL Ballarettes.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Alicia Lehman.
No, let's
Ashley
give them
Neville,
credit where it's due.
Like, that's, you're
also,
building...
Ash Neville's on a new hair journey. Get to the Midlands and...
No, get back to the Midlands, famously from Coventry.
That's
get
true.
Back to the
Get
heart and
back to your
soul.
roots.
Get back to her roots. We also got to talk about the curse that is Brighton Arsenal, called off again.
If I had £1.
And I will
have to.
say, I'm kind of annoyed about it, because if anyone watched Grimsby Wolves in the FA Cup and what they managed to put on that pitch,
I can't say that I was watching Grimsby
No,
Wolves.
you could have got it done. But there is nothing more WSL law than Arsenal's Lotte Moy pulling out the stops. So she did it last time when it got postponed. She put some money behind the bar in the pub. What's she doing this time? A lottery. If you went, you could win a signed shirt.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
nice. A lottery.
Oh.
Yes, very good.
It makes me feel really connected to the WSL, because I haven't played football in 2026 yet, because our pitch has been waterlogged every week.
Everyone's been. I mean,
Clapham
obviously,
is looking the photos from Clapham.
Crazy.
anyone who lives in the UK who listens and watches us will know that it has rained every day for the past
Hey,
month.
blue skies today.
I was seeing someone else post who plays in South London who was saying, I literally haven't played one game in 2026.
Yeah.
Crazy.
The rain be raining.
I know.
Yeah.
So
And
perhaps
do you know
it's-
whose fault it is?
What?
Arsenal women.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to
I
say
agree.
perhaps it's not surprising, given the history of that pitch at Crawley, perhaps it's not surprising that it took this much to get a game called off this season. Because actually they've been on a good run for the last sort of 18 months. Brisbane Road is another ground that, gets a little bit, whoa. But the fact...
And the Emirates.
And the Emirates, yeah. But actually the Emirates is looking not too bad. I watched...
That's why we have to ban Arsenal women from it. Did you not read the tweet from Spencer Morgan?
I did read the tweet, but I watched Arsenal Wigan yesterday and the pitch was looking fine.
And how good was that penalty shootout, by the way?
With the pie.
With the pie.
Yeah.
Gunnosaurus and pie. Have you seen that? That's a bit of you.
I was actually...
Put it on the Countess
I was going to ask
Instagram.
Maggie if we could go to Villa and take penalties against Hercules and what was the girl one?
And that's Honna's dream.
Hercules
is to
and
take
Bella.
penalties.
Bella and Hercules. But I forgot.
We'll
She's still in the
ask her.
building somewhere. I'm going to
We'll
go
ask
find
her.
her.
I think that's all the games. Have I missed any?
What did we talk about? Manchester United kind of scamming their way to a win
We
against
do
London
have to
City
talk
Lionesses.
about that. There's a bit of a... Connor, who does Manchester United stuff for the cutback, is having a bit of an injury crisis, mental breakdown at the moment, because it's not looking great. Anna Sandberg came off in the Champions League game. Jade Riviere, who does have her own injury issues, kind of went down the tunnel yesterday. Manchester United weren't good going forward, lacked real control in the game. And I think we talked about it last week with Max, but like Ellen Mangerheim, they're just not really figuring out where to fit her in this team. So, yeah, they'll get through. Obviously, their advantage is so big against Atletico Madrid. But I think you talk about that FA Cup game. Manchester United fans always feel sometimes a bit wobbly, but I think they are a little bit concerned at the moment about their squad.
Well, I guess the kind of advantage for them is that given their buffer against Atleti, they don't have the second leg isn't going to hold the same weight that maybe it could have, which I felt like would have been a very hard sort of back-to-back to have. But yeah, I did think, maybe this is going to be a point, somewhere where they drop points until the Millie Turner remontada began, which I love for her. I mean, truly just always one of the happiest looking people in football, I think, and someone who hasn't had a huge amount of game time this season. But yeah, I didn't think they look great, and they continue to sort of carry on going. It feels like the Champions League is almost more of their moment, and whether that's just because it feels like a focus, whether it feels more exciting to them, I don't really know. But yeah, I mean, at some points in the season, it's very hard with United, I think, because there are really valid criticisms of profiling the way the team plays and how they look. At other points, this is really once you're sort of in the middle of February, I'm like, you just got to win. It's too late.
You just got to dig.
to change anything. You just got to dig in and win. And I mean,
I do. Even though they did make some January transfers,
Jess Parker goal was great as well.
Yeah, even though they did make some January transfers, their bench still looks a little bit light with the Leah Scholler change slash rotation between sort of like Mallard, Turler, Schuler is kind of the only sort of attacking play that they have up their sleeve at the moment, and that is maybe the slight sort of issue when they're trying to turn games or win games. Also, back-to-back Thursday to Sunday turnaround is rough.
Yeah, that is really, really tough. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens in the FA Cup this weekend. We're going to be back on Friday for Champions League. We're going to have Tim Stillman back in the building. We'll put up a little question thing for that because we know that Arsenal fans have loved when we've had Tim on in the past, so we'll get the questions in for that. Thanks, Becky. Locked in for the Winter Olympics as per this week.
Obviously.
We'll wait and see if the flows arrive.
We didn't talk about the badges that Dylan made.
Thank you to Dylan for the badges and stickers.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
Jessie got the Milo DJing at Superstore.
Which was the one I really related.
Did you know that Milo was a DJ?
Now you do.
Now you do.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for listening and watching. We will see you on Friday.